Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Ban, for that introduction, which was very precise. Nowadays, I don't take introductions on face value. I always look between the lines. Because last time, there was this guy just like Dr. Ban who came and said, CK is such a warm personality. I went and looked up the dictionary. Warm means not so hot. If a girl had said that it was okay and a guy saying this made it even more complicated. But anyway, I think his intentions are very genuine because he's been following us quite prudently for this session, and it's nice to be back with you. And I must first compliment each one of you. On a Sunday afternoon in an exciting city like Bangalore, we can do so many other things with so many options. But you come to sit here in a classroom-like atmosphere and also learn something about humor. So can we all give each one of us a good round of applause? So the idea is, this is going to be some kind of a workshop and not necessarily talking from the pedestal. So at any moment you feel you have a point to make or you have a doubt, please interrupt me. I'll be more than willing to answer. Because when you interrupt or you ask a question, it confirms that you're at least listening to my speech. So I'll be grateful for your attention. Right? Now, when we talk about humor, we talk about stand-up comedy, we talk about jokes, we talk about humor. So my focus is going to be not just for the contest. Do you all agree that whether it's a Toastmasters or any other function, assuming that there are 3 speakers, all of them are equally qualified, their language skills are equally good, but the person who can create some bit of humor can definitely become better, right? And it makes a much better impact. So today the focus is going to be on that. The agenda is like this. For the first 40 minutes or so, I will list out some concepts based on my experience, based on what I've learned from the masters. Hopefully it should be useful to you. Please make a note, and then I'll divide you into 4 groups and ask you to practice some of the techniques, not all exhaustively, but some of the techniques which you can use, and each group will come and practice or come and do it on stage with audience feedback and my feedback on what was done well and what you think could have been done better. Is that a good idea? Yes. Right? Okay. Now before I start the session, I want to have a small interactive, because the numbers are small. I want each one of you to tell me your name and one word that best describes yourself. How do you think of yourself? Now if you ask me, I'll say my name is CK and I'm very creative. How did I get this creative tag? In my 5th standard, my class teacher, who was also our English teacher, she called my parents and said, your son is very creative. My parents were beaming. And she said, but the trouble is, he shows all his creativity in spelling. I've slightly overgrown that. I'm not that creative now, but at least I love to do things which people don't generally offer. Now please remember, speaking on humor is also quite a task. In fact, all speakers who attempt humor, whether they're successful or not, should be unhesitatingly recommended for a bravery award. Because if you know the travails and the troubles that go through, I'm sure you will agree with me. Right? So that being the case, so let's start the session with a small introduction on. The title of my speech is going to be Stand Up, Speak Up and Shut Up. What is the logic for this? What do I mean by this? I'll let you know slowly. I am an expert on humor. Right? If you lift from one source, you are a plagiarist. If you lift from many sources, you are an expert. And I am an expert. Now let me preempt, whenever I conduct this humor workshop, this is one question that keeps recurring. I'm sure many of you will also have this question. And the first question they ask is, CK, whatever I say, some smart guy in the audience will say, I saw this as a WhatsApp forward, or I've read it on net, I saw it on Facebook, what's the big deal? Now please, let me tell you, 95% or even more of humor is recycled. If you talk about originality, I think there are only 7 types which are really original. All the rest are recycled. You don't have to worry about people saying all this. But the challenge is, at that moment, are you making people laugh? Do I enjoy this? Now recently, I posted a joke on Facebook which my Toastmasters Club president, many years ago he posted, Asim Prohit. He came and said, my first visit to the US, he was a citizen, he was on H1B visa, he got his license also. He said, I was driving on the highway and suddenly a cop signaled, and I was driving very slow, but he signaled and said, hey, he said, what is it, officer? Am I breaking some rules? He said, yes, you're driving too slow. You should be going at 70 miles per hour here. But he says, come on, it says IS 26. He says, mister, that is the name of the highway and that is not the speed limit. And then he looked behind and beside her, my wife was looking ashen, frozen almost. And then the police asked, why is she looking like this? I just pulled out of highway IS 180. So if you imagine what must have happened. Now the moment I put this, some guy cranked and said, oh no, this has been in Facebook for so many years. So please, do not take offense or do not hesitate to come and say what you have to. Only you know how much struggle you had to come and crack it here. Remember the first rule, if you have to crack a joke or use humor in public speaking, a humorous speaker should have a long memory and hope the audience doesn't have. Invariably it will happen. But in every audience you'll have one guy who will say this, but doesn't matter. Your challenge is to satisfy the 90% and not this. So do you all agree that I have credentials to speak on humor as an expert? Because so many sources here. My inspiration, my grandparents. I don't know how many of you are fortunate to live with your grandparents. I was so blessed, I must say. We used to go for summer vacations to our village. And every evening used to be a typical scene where 6 to 7, my grandfather used to hold forth and used to tell us stories from Ramayana and Mahabharata, but that used to be more of a moral science story. He used to give us the incident and next day we had to repeat it or summarize with the moral that we learned. But after 7, after a small break of coffee or something, my grandmother used to take us backyard. And she was such a lovely, fun-loving woman. She used to tell the same stories, but with so much of fun. She used to exaggerate everything. She used to talk about Gadotkacha. He used to be an Asura, a Rakshas. How do I describe a Rakshas? You know, he used to pull out a palm tree to brush his teeth. Imagery. And all this is a part of humor. I'm going to tell you in a short while, you have to be able to create vivid images. And that's a part of humor. She has not read any humor book, but she was adept in doing all this. So that is my first inspiration with all the folk tales and mythology and things like that. I'm sure many of you must have fond memories of Asterix. And the more and more I read Asterix, it is nothing kiddish. There is so much of humor which we can relate to in daily life. More than the original writers, I simply marvel at the translators. Because the wordplay is something fantastic. In one particular scenario, the Roman soldier, I think some kind of a commander, he tells the soldier, keep an eye on the camp, the Gauls camp. And the soldier says it has to be an eye only, because in the war he just lost an eye. I mean, subtle, very, very simple, but you will be bowled over by the wordplay that happens. So I think this also sharpened the way I look at things. And ultimately in school, my friend introduced me to this master, P.G. Widows. He's a master. In fact, he's created some of the zaniest words which are still prevalent in the English dictionary. Just read the sentence. Very subtle, but conveys the message in a very effective manner. Gussie Fink-Knottle is a character. As far as Gussie Fink-Knottle, many an experienced undertaker would have been deceived by his appearance and started embalming at sight. Now you can just describe that he was stone-faced, but look at this imagery. I want you to note this because when you come and do your humor session here, one of the groups will be asked to do exactly this. Provide vivid imagery by creating scenes, by creating analogies, by creating metaphors, and that is the hallmark of a real good humorous speaker. There are lots of types of humor. We talk about wit, we talk about humor. There is some morbid humor, it comes at an inappropriate time, and sometimes it is unintended also. You don't intend to become humor, but like I'll tell you, the president said, Dr. Raj said we started Toastmasters, which is a non-profit venture. I was also running a business, which was a non-profit venture, but when I started, it was not meant to be. So you can imagine the kind of subtle humor which lands up. But the key difference between wit and humor is wit punctures, whereas humor nurtures the relationship. Wit is to poke fun or, demean your ego. My favorite example is, like during college times, I went up to a nice looking girl and said, "Hey, I think we met somewhere before." She said, "Yeah, that's why I don't go there anymore." This was, any other guy would have felt hurt, but I was thick-skinned, so we didn't get this. But what about humor which nourishes or nurtures? You will pave way for a better relationship. That's what humor is all about. Bernard Shaw, one of my favorite authors, was taking a walk. Mark Twain was taking a walk in the London Park. A stiff upper-lipped British gentleman came across. Immediately, Mark Twain said, "Good morning, how do you do?" And the British gentleman got upset and said, "You know how these British are very, very reserved. How can you wish me? We've never met before." He did not say anything. Next morning, again they came across, "Hi, good morning, I think we met yesterday." Even he could not hide his smile and he reached out his hand. So in the classic case, he converted an opponent into a friend. So that's what humor does. What is this morbid humor? Sometimes when you land up in situations like funeral, you come out with something which again becomes very morbid. And then I have to go here, is it? Yeah. Imagine, how can you not laugh? And he says the laugh is gone. But maybe his intentions are good. So that's why in communication many times this happens, isn't it? Your intent is very good, but the content is something and the impact is completely different. Anyway, why humor first of all? I want you to react. We are all getting along fine without using humor, right? We've reached quite this far. We won medals, we won appreciation awards in our respective offices. So why humor at all? In life or at work or even personally? What do you think is the chief reason?
To convert the opponents.
To convert the opponents, okay.
Makes life more enjoyable.
Makes life more enjoyable. Okay.
Have better relationship.
Have better relationship.
To reduce the seriousness.
Break the ice and bridge the gap.
To reduce the seriousness.
Effective form of self-defense.
Effective form of self-defense. Okay.
Increases the lifespan.
Increases the lifespan. Yes, why not? Yes.
Increases interest.
Increases interest.
Makes point better.
Makes the point better.
Find peacefulness inside ourselves.
Yeah?
Find peacefulness. Peace.
Ah.
Find peace in us.
In ourselves. Give it a good round of applause. The most important benefit is it does a lot of good for yourself. First of all. Why? Because a person without humor you're jolted by every pebble on the road. Right? Somebody makes an innocent, harmless remark, you start taking it very seriously. And what happens to the other party? Nothing happens. Only your peace gets altered. And you start wondering, what's all this about? You lose a lot of health, you get BP, you get pressure and all these things. But suppose you have a sense of humor, even adversarial situation you can convert it to your favor. Like a middle-aged man was taking a walk with his attractive wife in Cubbon Park very recently. And a passerby came and said, "Beauty and the Beast." This guy got very upset. He went and said, "Hey, how dare you call my wife a beast?" Any other guy would have thought of this as an insult. But he converted this simply because he had this. And believe me, even that guy could not help laughing and said, boss manna padta hai. Thank you. I'm sorry for what I said. See, this is what happens when you have a sense of humor. I'm not saying that you will come up with such situations, but it is known to drastically reduce opposition. More importantly, you feel so peaceful because you have not been impacted by the insult that they intended to do. Because if you don't accept something, like Gautam Buddha says, if somebody gives you a gift and you don't accept it, it doesn't belong to you. Similarly, the insults and the... What are the barriers? We all know that humor is good. You gave so many wonderful reasons. But what are the barriers?
Acceptance.
Acceptance.
Timing.
Pardon?
Timing.
But the first thing is acceptance, right? You simply don't know. Yeah?
Understanding difference.
Understanding difference.
Taking yourself too seriously.
Taking yourself too seriously.
Hesitant to.
Hesitant, and that hesitation comes because of
no, not very confident about it.
Acceptance. You don't
Fear,
understand.
isn't it? You
Yeah,
fear.
yeah, no.
What will happen if I flop?
Yeah.
But do you all agree that without cracking a single joke, your presentation can flop?
Yes.
By not looking at the audience, by continuing in a monotonous voice, not looking at anybody and proceeding without any time limit, all this can actually create a vacuum. So it's not that only for humor will create all this. So first thing is to get over that fear that nobody will laugh. You have to overcome that, and only then you can surpass that first step of standing up, right? As it is, public speaking is quite scary for many people, and on top of that, using humor becomes a double-edged sword. So that's why many of us don't even want to attempt this. So compliment someone for the simple fact that they've attempted humor, isn't it? Any other barriers?
Preparation, like,
Where will I find the material, right? Because any material that I find, somebody says, I've already heard this. This is an old joke, or a PG, or something like that. You keep getting it. And third one, very important, as someone said, how will I deliver? And that the timing comes as a part of that. I either deliver the punchline wrongly, or the same joke somebody else says, everybody laughs, but when I say, everybody looks at it like a funeral procession. Why? Maybe my personality itself is not suited for humor. Many people tell me, I don't think I'm cut out for humor. Humor is born. My retort is only babies are born. All others can be made, right? I do agree that 2% in this world are blessed with an innate gift of humor. Let's not deny that. But the 98% of us can learn how to be humorous. And that is something which comes from me, who was known to be one of the most serious guys during college. It was such an unattractive personality that I never used to get a second look from girls. Forget second look, even first look was difficult. But the moment I went on stage and I started interacting, the kind of response that is something tremendous. And even today, I get Facebook requests from all the girls whom I thought were my Swapna Sundaris. But all too late, but all of them well married, settled, all in anyway. Impact. Will I create the same impact as somebody else? So that's what prevents them. So in this workshop, hopefully, we are going to cover the content and the delivery part, because it's going to take time. Don't think just by attending this session you will all become humor personified and you'll walk out becoming jokers or something. No, that's not the idea. Just to give you the seeds, and everything depends on how well you practice this in your teams. Let's see if some of these techniques help. So, what are the techniques for speaking up? So, you will apply some of these as we go ahead. I want to give you, this is the original. This is something that I have derived from my own experience, which is called as the OWL technique of using humor in public speaking. What is this OWL? O stands for observe. You don't have to necessarily run after joke books or some mailing list to crack the jokes. Just observe what happens within you. And there is so much happening in your office, in your school. How many of you read that mail seriously, which your principal must have sent? Yeah? And how many of you practiced? At least put some thoughts into this, right? And that is important. Because when you really look and see, as the principal rightly mentioned in his MC's address, it was embarrassing then, but today you are able to laugh over it because of the experience that you have. So many things must have happened, but we don't even want to look at that. Now take a look at this picture. Very appropriate. This was not taken by me, by the way. This was taken by somebody else. But let me show you a picture which I took, and then I'll come to the logic behind this. I was in Madurai recently, Tamil Nadu town, and you already want me not to talk politics, but it's not about politics, but this is about a DMK strong man. Name is not important for us. His name is sitting there behind, on the left side with the laptop. There are some of his cronies who are wishing him happy birthday. And best wishes from whom? Barack Obama. I was really psyched. I thought, is this guy so popular? Even Prime Minister doesn't get all this. But when I went closer, I understood. They had water. So if you have a quarter, I think anything is possible. Thank God they stopped with cotton. You understand, this is not something that was waiting or something. You just need to observe and it will fall on your laps. Now all of us are equipped with the smartphones now. You don't have to necessarily note down anything. Simply click. How I regretted, I didn't carry those smartphones some 15 years ago because they were not available. I was having this Pani Puri Andheri stall near Mumbai, where you have many such stalls. And there was a guy with a t-shirt of Nike, right? Nike, the logo was right, the tick mark. But what's the slogan of Nike?
Just do it.
Just do it. But you know what? The cloth looked something, it was not original. It was duplicate, crumpled. But the slogan said it all. It said, just fake it. I really said hats off to the guy for being at least sincere. Now this is not something you'll find in a joke book, right? All this you won't find in a joke book. So be observant. Are you awake? Are you looking around? That itself will be a great source of excitement. Somebody, in fact, this happened to me in the Rajdhani Express. The guy next to me had ordered meals, and the guy gets the meals tray. This guy got immediately upset. You said there will be 2 bhajis. There's only aloo gobi. What is all this? He says, there are 2 bhajis, aloo gobi. Now, if he was a Toastmaster, he would have won the prize in table topics, but the customer was upset. Then somebody had to come and do all this. But this is something that happens on a day-to-day basis. Not that you have to go and look for something fantastic, not that you have to make everybody the roof shattered or something like that. W stands for write it down. Earlier, in those technologically not so savvy days, I used to carry a small pocket notebook and promptly used to note down all these one-liners or posters or anything that is, or anybody, whatever I hear. But today it's much, much simpler. You don't even have to copy this, you just have to click and keep it in your memory. Make sure you document it because don't trust your memory too much. I remember my school teacher telling me a short pencil is better than a long memory. Note it down, whatever it is. So that for the next task, this becomes very easy. Because there is so much of information coming in, unless you categorize this, you're not going to learn. Be able to link all these stories. There's no point in having a fantastic, humongous file if you're not able to link this. But the linking will not happen immediately. Because I faced this horror. Had to wait. You might have read a nice anecdote. You want to insert it in your table topics or you want to insert it in a project speech, but the topic is not appropriate and you will have to wait for 6 weeks, 7 weeks. That's why I said you may have to kiss many frogs before you find the prince. And it happened to me. This is once again a very famous incident of mine. I made a promise to myself that I will not repeat too many of my jokes earlier, but this is something very compelling and you will understand why I am saying so. I read a nice anecdote about marriage and divorce in a magazine. And I was itching to use this in the table topic session. For the guests, table topics is something where a speaker is given a topic and you have to come and speak immediately without any preparation. And that is what table topics are. So 6 weeks passed and I did not get the topic that I was looking for. 7th week I got exactly the topic, something about marriage and divorce. I sprang up and said, 3 days after my marriage, my wife wanted to go for a honeymoon and I took her to an exotic place. My wife was very upset because I took her to a graveyard. She was furious. Is this the exotic place you are talking about? Do you have any sense? I said, hey, what do you think? People are dying to come here. Unfortunately, she did not laugh like what you did just now. She got upset, called my parents and said, your son has a corny sense of humor, I wanted yours. Then my parents started pacifying me and said marriage is all about give and take and things like that. And for the past 25 years, ladies and gentlemen, I have not had a single fight with my wife.
Wow.
She goes her way and I go her way. All married men do this, but nobody will end. Okay, this is how I ended the speech. In our club, we have an evaluator for the topics also. So the general evaluator doubles up as an evaluator for the topics and he said, hey, this CK is too much here. You give him a topic and he comes out with a response. Only I know. It took me 7 weeks to come out with that response. And I remember President Abdul Kalam's words. when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. You have to be ready. It's not just a great thing of taking down all the fun file. You must be able to relate it consistently. Even if there is a table topic going on, suppose somebody gets a topic, you must be parallelly thinking, what would I have done if I had got this topic? And that's the only way you will stay alert and you will also be ready. Here is a practical tip that I'll give you. I don't know whether this happens in PST and Toastmasters. Most of the clubs have a theme. You also have a theme for the meeting? And invariably, the table topic master will form topics around the theme. I've noticed this. Although I encourage our table topic masters not to do this because it becomes predictable, isn't it? But generally it happens like this. So if you're a smart guy, you will understand what the topic is and try to memorize or remember some quotations related to the topic, because every topic will be having something to the that saying, and it will look very spontaneous. Right? Do that. So learn to link it. Very, very important. Right from this session, if I were you, I'll be asking all these questions. What got the best reaction from the audience? Where did people laugh? Why did people hold the attention? Sometimes you might have noticed my voice was not so loud, and you might have missed out the punchline. Did it happen that way? Where do you think the speaker got the maximum laughs? Either because I've been hearing it, I've heard it for the first time, or if you feel the response was muted, just last week in our club somebody said this, or something like that. So analyze every point and say what way you could have done this better. Another tip for you, let's say you're going to give a humorous speech or your table topics, have one of your friends capture this on a cell phone or a video camera, and once you go home and look at all this, answer all these questions. Where do you think you can improve? What do you think you can do better? And each question answered honestly and sincerely will get you much better results. Let me give you some techniques, and when I'm going to divide into groups, you will have to use this. The first group will use this technique. There's nothing but, if there is no you in humor, there is no humor in you. If you are not able to laugh at yourself, then I don't think you can ever be humorous. Now, what is the benefit of laughing at yourself? Nobody else is going to get upset. If you remember how I started my speech, I talked about a warm personality and all the digs were about me, not about the audience. So you're not likely to get upset. So at least you will realize, in spite of all the flowery introductions somebody gives, oh, this guy is also cool, and he's also had his own share of failures, or he's able to laugh at himself. So self-deprecating humor is one of the first things that we learn when you want to do something on humor. But be careful. Don't overdo it, that people really think you're an idiot. Do the self-deprecating part too much. And it also gives you the strength to laugh at your own mistakes. When Ronald Reagan, was shot, he was being driven into the hospital, and in the ICU, as he was about to be operated, there were 4 surgeons hovering around him. In that moment of tragedy, you know what he asked them? I hope all of you are Republicans. And they said, Mr. President, today we are all Republicans. I mean, look at that. Even in that moment of adversity, if you are able to do that, that is your ultimate. So first thing is self-deprecating humor. So whoever wants to practice this, you will come to group 1. Start thinking about something very original, not lifted from somewhere. And I'm not expecting you to bring the roof down, but the process I'm worried about. How are you able to craft that message using that self-deprecating humor? Second is the surprise element. The speaker mentions a series of incidents or one-liners where you think it is going to land up here, and suddenly you get derailed. How is this practice? Let's watch the video. Similes and rhetorical devices. I think you have a project also, project 6 or 4. For us it was project 6. Way with words. Not using bombastic words, but the right kind of words which will add a lot of charm to the language. So when you use those memorable images, it creates an image and you start thinking about all this. So that is something which theme number 3 is going to do. I'll explain all this. This is something that all of us need to practice, which is called as the rule of 3. We also call this as a build and burst. You also have a surprise element here, But the fact is, you prepare the audience. We call this as a setup. You set up the audience, you create a nice theme, and then you give out the punchline, which simply is devastating. And why we say 3? Somehow there is some kind of a sanctity attached to 3, the number 3. Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, Son, Holy Father, Son and the Ghost and whatnot. So everywhere we have this trinity. So something happens. First, normal. Second is also normal, but the third is completely devastating. We watch the world champion of public speaking in 1997, I think, where he uses the rule of 3 very effectively, and you see how it's going to be.
As a matter of fact, the way you should treat failures like the preacher did when he gave his first sermon before the big preacher in the church one day. And the sermon was really bad. And the preacher got up, the right reverend got up and told him that wasn't very good. And he humiliated the young preacher in front of the whole audience. And the preacher said, I'll do better next week. And the next week he came in and he gave his second sermon. And he remembered being humiliated. And he said, I'm not going to fail this week. He said, my fellow parishioners, I can fail. You can fail. And the Monsignor can fail. I can sin. You can sin. The Monsignor can sin. I can go to hell. You can go to hell.
Your comments, please. What do you think?
Amazing.
Yeah?
Amazing.
But the dynamics, how we built up the 3. What else did you notice? There is also an important delivery technique in humor.
Not a direct attack.
No, the delivery part of it. Pause, very crucial. Did you see the pause before the punchline? Imagine if you had just said it as a conversation, it would have had so much of effect. I can send, you can send, and slowly he builds you up, and then finally, he didn't even have to repeat that, mentions the third one. The audience got it. That is the power of the rule of 3. This is a world championship speech, not international speech contest, not a humorous speaking contest. He also finishes the speech with a one-liner which is amazing. I'll show you that also later. So the rule of 3, yet another team is going to try this out and then find out how we can use this rule of 3. So you have to think of some own situations, build up a nice story. So each one of you will help each other in bringing up a nice incident. But since you're all professionals, the point that I would like to make as a businessman, as a professional, as a trainer, or even as an executive making presentations is, if you can master this, point, humor, point. I want to make a point, I add a one-liner or an anecdote, and again come back to the point. I'll give you an example. Today, in the competitive marketplace, you have to be proactive. Speed is of the essence. You see what has happened to BlackBerry? They lacked responsiveness and they are nowhere in the picture now. Now if you don't have that speed and proactiveness, you will land up like the husband who was playing chess on their 10th wedding anniversary with his wife. Suddenly the wife looked up and said, "Hey, George, it reminds me of the time we were dating." Husband says, "I don't remember playing chess while we were dating." She says, "Even then, you used to take such a long time to make a move." Proactive, being speed of the essence. So when you combine this, it becomes a very powerful way to remember this entirely. But my favorite piece of point humor point is, as a presenter, as a trainer, I always say, I'm sure Toastmasters will be aware, audience analysis is very important in presentations. You need to understand who's there, how much do they know, how much do they don't know, what they will attract, what they will not like, and you have to do a lot of preparation. Yes or no? Now, preparing for a speech without the audience in mind is like you writing a love letter to whomsoever it may concern. So, preparation is necessary. Are you able to get this? So you will remember, the fact is, somebody said it makes the message memorable. I used this first for 10 years ago. Till today I get mails from the participants. CK, we can never forget this because the concept was drilled down so well because of this example. Right? Now, recently I tried this. Now can someone tell me what is the difference between persuasion and influence? Or are they both the same?
No.
No? Then what is the difference?
Influence is a
Influence is like we decide
Yeah.
and we influence to do that, probably. There is the question.
Persuasion is
Deliberate.
deliberate, okay.
Yeah.
And influence?
Persuasion is your own willingness to do it. Influence is your willingness to follow
Indirect.
somebody else.
Indirect.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, listen to this and tell me whether this is influence or persuasion. A young, attractive girl going for regular morning walks will improve the health of at least 10 young men. Influence or persuasion?
Influence.
She did not want you people to do this, but by her walk, unknowingly she improves the health of so many people. Last time when I used this, one guy got up and said, I object to the word young men. You should have said men. That's it. Right? So persuasion, as you rightly put it, is deliberate. I use certain tools, certain techniques to get you to agree with me, whereas influence, just by my behavior, I can influence people. In fact, there's a very nice saying, nothing humorous about it. Don't worry that your children are not listening to you. Worry instead that they're always watching you. They pick up habits, both good and bad, merely by watching. I picked up a nice habit from a friend of mine. Whenever I call somebody on a cell phone, the first thing I ask is this a good time to talk? Because I don't know what state he's in. I've never told this to anyone at home. My son works for Accenture. Just the other day he was calling his friend over the cell phone. He said, hey dude, is it a good time to talk? I found it very nice. I said, hey, not bad. He said, no, Nana, I've seen you doing this, that's why. I've not told him anything. Then I was acutely aware, even my bad habits this guy will pick up. So that's the power of influence. Anyway, this should not get into a lecture on influence, but I hope you understand the point humor find. One more example, just to make you more. Suppose I say, confidence is important, but overconfidence is not. If you have confidence, people will respect you. But overconfidence, it gives you a cocky sense of confidence, and you may end up as a fool, like the final year student of agriculture. As a part of the final year term work, he was asked to visit a farm and give a review. At the end of the visit, he goes to the farmer and says, your method of cultivation is hopelessly outdated. I'll be astonished if you get even 1 kg of apple from this tree. The old farmer says, I too will be astonished because this is a mango tree. Confidence is good, overconfidence is good. The reason I'm giving you 3 examples is the 4th group is going to attempt this. Please come out with something unique. And if you are able to master this, let me tell you, your project speeches, your table topics, everything will become child's play for you. Because please remember, people will not laugh when they think you're trying to be funny. But if it comes as an afterthought, people are ready because there's an element of surprise. You didn't even expect this, and suddenly it comes. And the point is also made. But suppose you say, I'm going to tell you a joke. Please don't make that mistake. I made that mistake once in Toastmasters. I said, I'm going to tell a joke. Then one guy got up and said, CK, you tell us what you want to. We will tell you whether it is a joke or not. So be very careful. And when you're trying to use humor, be relevant to your audience. Don't book up something which happened in West Virginia and come and try to show off your Yankee accent here, because people may simply not connect. Now, this is a Toastmasters meeting predominantly. The guests will please forgive. Tell me, how many Toastmasters does it take to change a light bulb? Yeah?
1.
Only 1 is it? 3. 1 to change, 1 to time, and 1 to evaluate. But an even better answer was, we need 20. 1 to change, 19 to applaud. Because Toastmasters, if you don't know, for everything and everything we are asked to applaud, just to increase the confidence of the speaker. And this, the next one I tried very effectively in Daffodils Toastmasters. Daffodils Toastmasters, as you know, in Malaysia, I was the speaker on humorous speaking. My session was supposed to start at 6:40 and I landed up at 6:50. I think they were managing with some table topics. What to do? I had to apologize. I said, I'm sorry, not my fault. I was rushing through the traffic and I jumped the signal to reach here. Traffic cops stopped me. I said, what do you mean? Don't you know that the traffic rules have changed? He said, what? See, you know something? And I pulled out the Toastmasters manual and said, look here, after the red light flashes, you get 30 seconds grace. Obviously, he didn't buy that. But I'm just saying, this will click in a Toastmasters meeting. If I go and tell this to a Rotary or even a Lions, it may not. So be relevant. Choose appropriate anecdotes. Even if you've stolen an anecdote from Reader's Digest, put in that local effect. Kanayan, whatever it is. Put that local effect. Manjunatha, whatever. You already have good exposure to both. The delivery technique, most important part is timing and the pause before the punchline. There are many other things that if you have to be confident, you have posture, everything, all these Toastmasters know pretty well. Your project 1, 2, 3, 4 talks about all this, so I'm not going to dwell on that. But the important thing is the timing and the pause before the punchline, which we saw in the Toastmaster speech. So that you must remember. So in each one of your demonstrations, I'm going to be looking out for these things. And be yourself. Don't try to clone somebody else. Blindly imitating someone else's style is pointless. It's like asking a pig to sing, teaching a pig to sing. It not only wastes your time, but it annoys the pig like anything. There's no point, right? Be yourself. Don't try to clone because you will be a miserable flop. Now, in my case, for example, I'm reasonably good at anecdotes, one-liners, because I read a lot. That suits my personality. I can never do slapstick. I can never prance around the stage, even if I'm doing a serious talk, a humorous talk. That is okay with me. So choose what genre you are comfortable with, and it doesn't mean that you don't get enough laughs. Please remember, humor is not about bringing everything down. If you are able to get a smile from the audience, that is your first step to success, and slowly you will improve the effect. Please remember, it's not about just cracking a joke and then finding it. If you crack a joke, people will say fine, they laugh for 5 minutes. But my aim of using humor is, I want the audience to laugh for 5 minutes and think for 15 minutes. Leave them with a lasting impression. Why did the speaker use this? The point was made much effective because of this. Thousands of people say smoking is bad to health. They use PPTs, they use statistics, but there was a speaker who came and started a session like this. Smoking helps you lose weight. One lung at a time. Immediately he got her attention and he completely changed the dynamics of the entire meeting. So remember this. I'm not going to give you a laundry list of resources because there is so much available on the net. Especially you click on YouTube and search for humorous speeches, you're going to get thousands and thousands. But I'm just going to give you 3 books which I found very useful, especially for public speakers. There's a nice article by Anthony Audriet. Or you just Google for Tony Audriet, you will get this entire article is about what are the different types of humor, similes, malapropisms. Everything has been mentioned very well, so you may find this useful. Like Touch again is for business people who use humor in business, and Podium Humor again is written by a Toastmaster, ideal for speakers like us. Before I summarize, I'm going to summarize everything, but before that, a couple of questions, and then we will have divided into 4 groups. Any questions before I summarize? Anything on what we have discussed or any doubts that you might have? Yeah.
So, any flop moment of yours which you distinctly remember, as in we heard about all the enjoyable moments?
When it happens to me, I'll get back to you. Sorry, sir. No, this is also a rehearsed one because in every session somebody will ask, what if the joke flops? Has your joke flopped?
Yeah.
I'll say when it happens, I'll get back to you. But that's not the truth. It will flop. I have been booed also, because I was not audible in so many things, but those are all stepping stones. Don't ever. The one trick to overcome this failure is, when you mention humor or a joke, say it with a straight face. Don't start smiling. What's the advantage? If it clicks, it's a jackpot. Otherwise, it was not meant to be a joke anymore. Isn't it? You're not worried if they don't laugh. That is important. But see, if the audience starts laughing, you better laugh. Otherwise, they'll think something wrong with you. So, practice this. And I think the challenge is, initially you are bound to fail because not many people, and let me tell you one more thing. What works in this Toastmaster club will not work in some other Toastmasters club. Here, you guys must have been used to a brand of humor which other people may completely go over their head. You must be prepared for that also. You must be wondering what's happening. And in an area contest, you will feel this. In the club, you are a lion, and there nobody laughs at your jokes. This will happen because you have not analyzed. It happened typically with Chennai speakers. We were all, the district was all, together. Chennai, Tamil, everybody. And those guys, Chennai guys, have tremendous sense of humor. But it's all oriented towards Tamil movies. Rajnikant, Vivek and Vadivelu, which is very, very palpable in Chennai, but in Bangalore it was a flop because there were so many other crowd also. Similarly with Hyderabad guys. He used a series of Guru, which was very well understood by the Hyderabadis, but here it flopped. So you just need to understand the audience. So don't write love letters to whomsoever it may concern, but very, very specific. Yeah, please.
So when this happens, so when you are going and giving a speech, it happens in a business presentation also, you have to know your audience. But at times you may not get that exposure to know your audience. How to prepare for that day?
I will not agree to that you will not get an audience. You will get at least 10 minutes before going to the presentation. Ask as many people as possible. At least who's going to come here? Are they going to be technology heads? Are they going to be commercial guys? Or are they going to be general public? Or are they going to be 5 years experience? What do they already know? Very quick questions. Definitely you will get the answer and be prepared. Very rarely you will be simply they'll jump and say you start.
No. Usually what happens when you are making a business presentation, you get ample of time to study your audience.
Yes.
Like if I am a Toastmaster in India and I am also working for certain company in India, I am placed in say a geography like Japan.
Correct.
I know nothing about.
Okay.
So how do I prepare myself for such an unexpected audience? Because definitely fear element will be there.
Yes.
I have to overcome that first. Then second part is I am not prepared to know their culture. What makes them tick? What does not make them tick?
You gave the answer yourself. I am not prepared to know their culture. No, it's not that. Try. There are many sites which give you some tips on cross-cultural impact. Okay. How to behave in Japan. There are so many series. Managing in Japan, managing in China. Read all those things. What are the things that will come up? Okay, who has given you this assignment? I mean, let's say.
Say my seniors.
Your seniors. Maybe whomever is friendly with you, maybe a couple of tips. Hey, tell me what do they don't like, what do you like? Is it okay to extend the introduction for too long time? For example, Europeans would like some kind of chit-chat for a long time, whereas Americans, if you go too long, they'll say cut the crap and come to the point.
Yeah.
At least this you must be able to grasp. And then your presentation will be much, much better.
Right.
Or the moment you're going to Japan, try to quote from some Buddhist Zen thinker or something like that will make them much, much better.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a very thin line
Yeah.
between humor and actually insulting somebody. So how do you not cross that line? Because what seems funny to you may not seem funny to someone else. They could take it as an insult or something like that. You may not even touch on sex, religion or politics, but you would make a very generic remark which is humorous to at least 60%, but that 40% will think that no, this is very, you're talking against all women or all men or something like that. You're definitely bound to find sensitive people in
It
the
will
crowd.
happen. It will happen.
One more thing related to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes someone plays on sleep because probably sleep and got hurt also, but others are laughing. They get laughter, right? That also happens related to that.
Yeah. No, but to answer what she asked, please remember this very clearly. Perceived humiliation is the parent of destructive behavior. You have told something very innocently, but the other person perceives humiliation and then he starts responding. Now, I was watching a TV program. There's a very famous South Indian actress called Nadia. She acts in Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam movies. Now, she was narrating an incident where a very famous director was trying to narrate a script to her of a new movie or something. Now, it was her habit to say, I know. What she was trying to tell was, I understand what you're saying. But it was her way to say, I know. It was a mannerism. Midway, this director got upset and said, if you know everything, why should I narrate this thing? And he walked out. Classic case of perceived humor. Then she ran behind him and said, all I was trying to tell you was, I understand. And why don't you say so? What do you mean by saying, I know? This typically happens. So maybe, if you notice that there is a body language difference or something, right thing to do is go up and clarify and apologize if the chance permits. But suppose it is happening in a meeting like this, you may have to go afterwards and then sort things out. This happens. Cultural, so many things this happens.
And this doesn't generally is not related to humor. It happens in anything.
Yeah, I know.
For example, a friend of mine he's a great keyboardist and he plays thing. And another friend of mine just casually mentioned, hey, keyboardists don't get any attention, it's the guitarists who get the attention. And he got completely offended by it. It was just a generic statement that he made. It was not intended towards him, but he refused to talk to us for a week because of that.
No, same language. The simple word, people misunderstand. I was in there's a place in Sheshadripuram called Gullu's Charts. Please try it out. Amazing charts you get. Gullu's Charts is Sheshadripuram. So, my son's favorite, so he asked me to get some pav bhaji. I placed the order and I was just waiting. Now, the conversation is between a middle-aged lady who's from the same locality, obviously a North Indian or a Marwari, I don't know what. And apparently, she had wanted this pav bhaji without onions and garlic, or whatever, Jain pav or something. And when she got this, she found that it had onions and garlic. So she started shouting at that pav bhaji maker. No, I didn't want it this way. This is all hopeless, this. Now, just listen to this carefully. This guy simply asked, "Kaise banna?" Okay, exact words. She said, "What do you mean, kaise banna? I want this to be made. I'm not going to accept." Again, he asked, "Kaise banna?" What was the intent for him?
How to make it.
She thought, "How can I make it?" I mean, it was a typical crisscross, and then both of them realized that this guy is actually saying something, and then she cooled down and said, "This is how I want it." So this happens very common. You just can't. So if you are able to sense something by the body language, quickly go sort it out. And you can't prevent this. There's nothing, because as long as you are sincere. But if your intention is to take a swipe at him, then you better deserve this. Sometimes you feel like slapping some guys,
So
right? Yeah.
Any experience you would like to share when you give the corporate corporate presentation?
Yeah.
Or how to make your corporate presentation more humorous?
We'll do
Add
that.
some.
We'll do one thing. We'll now break. As we discuss all this, I'll be able to share more experiences, whatever. Right? Now, I want to.
One question.
Yeah.
Sir, when we write a speech, we write with one mentality. When I've written with some serious mentality, I've written a speech, now I think of inducing humor. So forcibly inducing humor, does that destroy the flavor of the speech, or is it okay to induce humor?
Forcibly inducing definitely will destroy. So look at the slide. How to weave humor into the presentation. Take of some incident and see if a one-liner will actually add value to that incident. And then slowly slip. People will love it. So that comes with practice. You just have to make sure the right kind of linkage is possible. Or some anecdotes or something like that. But you have to keep checking. You have to keep seeing where will this fit. Will it be inappropriate? So many things you have to see.
No, as in you write down a speech and then you try to put in humor? Or
Yes, why not? See, first thing is you have a mind mapping. You have so many ideas. And suddenly when you look at the script, you find that it's very dull. Everywhere it looks like a very, report-like speech, very statistical. Somewhere you add some, humor or one-liner to add this, then it becomes much more enjoyable. In fact, that will be the biggest difference for the speech. People will not remember anything, but they will remember this. That's why we ask you to. Okay, before we break up for tea,